All right, so we're live. Let me get this music out of the way. All right, welcome back to Critical Thinking. This is lesson 3, so that's the halfway point. There are 5 lessons in this course, and so we're at the top of this star, this critical thinking star. So those of you who have made it through the whole course, you guys are legends. I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. And those who are just joining for this lesson, also thank you for being here. This means the world to me. Thank you guys. I have insane appreciation for all of you who are here tonight. So I want to start with a little debate because this is planned as a Socratic seminar. So I want to start with a little debate. So who knows who this is?
Mr. Machiavelli.
Yes, sir. This is Mr. Machiavelli, and he's mostly famous for one publication, although he is famous for other things. But is anybody familiar with the name of the book or the collection of essays that he's famous for?
State. I don't know how it's called in English. It should be государство, no?
Почти.
Probably it's state.
Almost. You're almost there. Vadim, I know you know this. Are you there? Daniel, you should also know this. I'm gonna shame all of you.
I know only Russian name.
What's the name in Russian? Just say it in Russian. That's the whole purpose of this school.
Государство.
Yeah, государь.
Государь.
Right? Yeah, the prince. The prince. The name of the book is The Prince. The name of the book is The Prince, and that's kind of what we. Yeah, I'm gonna go out and say this. That's what we remember him for. On a massive scale, right? So what is the key idea of The Prince that we discuss today still?
The end justifies the means.
That's one of them. The end justifies the means. Other ideas?
What is more important, to be feared or loved?
My man. Yeah, my man. And by the way, Daniel did not know this. He did not participate in the preparation of this seminar. So good for you, Daniel. Yes, he said that it is better to be feared than loved, right? And he said this as advice to the leader, let's call it Italy, but not Italy at the time, but let's say the leader of Italy at the time. He wrote it as a series of, it's advice, right? It was advice. It's better to be feared than loved. So that's an idea, right? It's an idea in political science. We don't necessarily have to agree with this idea, but I want you guys to consider this idea. Before we go into discussing this idea, I want to talk about this man. So who knows who this man is?
Confucius.
Either I fucked up or you guys are wrong. I hope it's not Confucius. This is, I think this is Lao Tzu.
Could be.
Yeah.
It's like Pushkin. If you don't know the poet, call Pushkin. If you don't know Chinese philosopher, say Confucius.
It could be Lenin, right? But it's. I hope this is Lao Tzu. I think I got this right.
We believe you.
You don't have to, right? That's the whole point of this course. But he wrote a book called Tao Te Ching, right? Which is about, a famous quote from this series of philosophical notes is that, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right? Things like that. You guys remember those kinds of ideas?
Mm-hmm.
But another idea that he had related to political science is this, that it's the idea that what all men fear is indeed to be feared, right? So that's his idea. So that's kind of like plus minus, black white, positive negative, right? There's a duality here, right? So let's compare these. Idea number one: it is better to be feared than loved, right? So it's good to be feared. And the idea here is that what all men fear is indeed to be feared. So let's talk about this. Which side are you leaning towards more in terms of your personal philosophy? If you were an advisor to the king, wink, wink, you know, how would you advise the king? And it doesn't have to be Lukashenko, right? Any leader. You know, how would you advise the king? What idea would you support? In general, what comments, ideas, thoughts, associations come to your mind after this short little presentation?
Okay, I can start if you want.
No, I don't care. I'm okay with silence. Silence means people are thinking.
Okay,
But if
well,
you want to
everyone,
get going. Yeah.
yes, if everyone is still thinking, I would say that if we were in the past when we had kings and brute force was the thing, the real thing, okay, it was, I think, to be feared was quite important. But today, to be loved is much more important because politics is changing. Today, rulers are very dependent on the opinions of ordinary folk. And even the situation with Lukashenko demonstrates that if you are super authoritarian dude with utmost support of military force and police force, you still can lose your authority if nobody likes the way how you rule, and if the actions caused by your police, they just terrify people. So you can lose the power basically if you don't have support. Today, having support is much more important.
Well, to you made me think of something, right? Here's one thing about Lukashenko, for example, that I think is a problem, right? He's not the kind of guy that you can walk up to on the street, right, and say hello to, most likely, right? Like he's gonna have bodyguards. He's not like a very approachable dude, right? If you want my opinion, I guess I'm leaning more towards this, right? What all men fear is indeed to be feared. I think this works better for our time because, I can throw Barack Obama in there. I assume that if you run into Barack Obama, you know, you're not going to be, if you approach him the right way, let's say, you're not going to be attacked by bodyguards immediately, right? Well, which, you know, you might be, but I guess there's a higher likelihood of you having a conversation, being able to say hello, being able to express your opinion, right? So I think approachability is becoming important. So I agree with a lot of points that you made, Daniel, but from my standpoint is that like approachability is important. Like this man is unapproachable. Would you guys agree with that?
Of course.
Like you can't schedule a meeting with this guy, right? Not to say that you can do that with the president of the US, right? Or the ex-president. But the likelihood is probably higher, I think, especially if you have, you know, controversial opinions from the leader's standpoint. So
Do you think that there are only two variants, love and fear? There is nothing between.
no, I don't think so. That's a bias, right? That's the bias of the black and white, of duality, right? Life is not black and white. Life is a rainbow. Absolutely not. I'm just trying to get a little debate going.
Okay. I ask because I think that love can be a bit irrational, and it doesn't mean that folk and people really understand all results of some kind of actions of government, or sometimes they love somebody, but these particular people are just as a decoration. For example, like, I don't know, British royal family. it looks like British people love them, but these people don't rule. They are part of their tradition, and in my opinion, it's better to have a real support and to have an honor. It's important when your folk believe in your action and believe that you know what you do, and it support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talk a lot about politicians in Northern Europe, especially, right? Like we say, oh, look, this is the mayor of Amsterdam. He's riding a bicycle with everybody. You can say hello to him, right? And we celebrate that, right? He's there with the people. So that's kind of cool, I guess, right? Isn't that what we want? And I don't know what we want. I'm just, trying to get a conversation going. But thank you for that comment, Maria. I agree with the points that you're making also. But political theory is something that I'm interested in, and I have my opinions, but I'm also still trying to decide. And I used to think that it's better to be feared than loved, but I don't think so anymore. I think I grew out of that idea. But yeah, I used to think that it's the right one. So anyways, we had the first lesson. Does anybody remember the key idea of the first lesson? So I just want to do a quick little revision. So this is like the critical thinking star, right? In the end, I'm going to send you guys a certificate with this star. I'm going to call you guys critical thinkers officially. So what was the key idea of lesson 1? Who remembers?
We talked about simplification of phrases, and we tried to understand the real meaning, looking at pretty odd phrases.
Yeah, so simplify, right? That's what's hiding behind lesson 1, right? We talked about euphemisms, this essential skill when you're reading, publications and media and just kind of consuming information, right? This ability to simplify. Sometimes simplifications can be a little crude, right? A little too much. Like I said that revolution always means war last time. And Maria, you had some comments against that, which were very reasonable.
And I found the definition of it, and I was right, because really a revolution means crucial changes with regime and everything around it.
But who wrote the definition?
People who write definition.
Yeah, well, fuck those people.
Come on, we can't say that about each kind of dictionary.
Yeah, we can.
No, there are some kind of tradition in language as well.
Yes, but we mean different things when they say them in different contexts, right? Googling definitions of official dictionaries is tricky. I want to show you something. So I'm a huge fan of alternative dictionaries. And these are
okay.
And these are so there are people like me who think like me. One of them is Matt Haig. He's a British best-selling novelist at the moment, and he also he has my position on this. He believes that we're not always right when we use the traditional dictionary. He also believes that we should have our own definitions of words, right? So, for example, I love his definition of the word freedom. If you're looking at the screen, do you see the definition here?
Mm-hmm.
It says a bigger cage, right? Interesting idea. He's basically saying that there is no freedom, right? There are always going to be limits. And if I Google the word freedom, so this relates to critical thinking directly. If I Google the word freedom, let's see what it says. Let's see what the Oxford Dictionary says.
Okay.
It says the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants.
Mm-hmm.
I accept that, but I accept the other one also. And that's what I like about language. And that's what critical thinking is all about, right? That's why I love asking people these questions. What is love? What is success? What is friendship, right? It's something that always changes. my argument basically was that the word revolution is often used in contexts that could mean war, right? Because if you're looking at what's happening in Belarus, there are already casualties, right? Maybe not like thousands of people have died, but there are deaths, right? So it is a conflict. So I'm not going to call it a revolution. I'm going to call it civil war. That's what's happening in Belarus, in my opinion. Just trying to explain to you where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. So, this is how he defines evil. He says, evil is selfish behavior that hinders the selfish aims of others. So, эгоистичное поведение, которое предотвращает эгоистичное поведение других. Ну, интересное, да, мнение? И вот он такой словарь написал. Right? Like alternative English dictionary. I love this stuff. But
it's also subjective. And when we are talking about revolution, I suppose it's partly true because I can agree, for example, that each revolution is almost always war, but not each war is revolution.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate, and that's what a big part of being a critical thinking teacher is just kind of challenging, right? The opinions of the students, and you need to do the same to me, is challenge me, right? And if we challenge each other, hopefully we grow intellectually together. So the idea of the second lesson. Some of you guys here have heard it. Some of you guys have skipped it. So I'm not going to ask you what it is. The idea of the second lesson was that it's important to fight mass opinion, right? The idea was that mass opinion is not always correct. It's not always the right one. And there is always kind of like an advocate of change that steps up and as we said last time, jumps off the bandwagon, right? And then after the person jumps off the bandwagon, what happens to the person?
The person will be killed.
Right. It's going to be, the person is most likely to be driven over, to be punished, to be ran over by the bandwagon, right? So I don't like this representation of bandwagon, and this is a common representation in critical thinking books, and that's something that I think should change, right? The guy that jumped off the bandwagon here, he's behind, so he's okay. Right? But my argument is that the person always ends up in front, right? Like Copernicus, when he said that the Earth is not the center of the universe, like the guy was just torn apart by public opinion, right? And if you think about how he felt inside, individually, emotionally, that must have been horrible to know that you're right, and to have people oppose you, right? Not just the church, but in general, public opinion was against him at the time. And I want to bring up another example. This guy is on the main page of Russian Wikipedia right now. What I like to do is just kind of go to Wikipedia every day, and I go to the English version and Russian version, some other languages, and just kind of like, this is how I quench my thirst for knowledge. And, this is something I do. But check out the Russian Wikipedia. This guy is on the main page, and I think he has an interesting story. Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis, he basically he changed the way we deliver babies. And it says here he's like called Spasитель Матерей, right? Like the savior of mothers. And he basically like decreased the chance that you're going to die when you're giving birth to a child, if you're a woman, by like half. So it's insane what he did. But there, if you read the article, it also says that his colleagues and the medical community was against him. They were like, no, you're an idiot, you're crazy, right? Because he jumped off the bandwagon. And listen, guys, this is great. This shocked me today. I just added this slide right before the lesson, but this totally blew my fucking mind away. He went into an insane depression because nobody believed him. And he ended up in like an asylum for crazy people. And that's where he died. And there are a bunch of like medical schools that are named after him. But this is the way he ended his life. Like, isn't that crazy? Isn't that something that we need to talk about? I think so. You know, and now we celebrate the way he changed the process of delivering babies. So this is one of the guys that jumped off the bandwagon, who wanted to think critically, who wanted to look at the world differently, who wanted to be an intellectual rebel. And yeah, a toast to Ignaz Philippe. Moving on. So any other examples that came to your head, or maybe if I give you some time to think about it, in history or in contemporary times, of a person jumping off the bandwagon and being punished for it by the bandwagon?
I think Galilei was turned
Harassed by the public?
Yes.
I think so too, yeah.
He actually there were a lot of people, but when you start thinking about them, it's like I don't remember any.
I suppose, for example, Descartes or maybe Newton. So some people who told something which was absolutely unreal for that particular people, especially in medieval ages, when people had to believe that everything was created by God. And some people tried to tell that, guys, there are some special laws and maybe it's not a God power.
Yeah. Well, there's religion is a big part of this conversation, right? And you know, in terms of like Copernicus, the Inquisition was the organization that harassed him. But I don't think it's always about God or a higher power.
It's about races, for example, when there was a concept that there are the good races and bad races, and therefore some of them are people who should have slaves and some of them are slaves.
We're going to talk about slavery and race today. That's part of our gig tonight. But yes, that relates. But I just want to say something, and let me know how you guys feel about it. But I just think that we don't like change that much. And that's something we're going to talk about in the fourth lesson. But I'm just going to go out and say it now. I think change is an issue for us. You know, we once we get comfortable with the way things are for us, right, and we feel some sort of comfort, we don't want to change that situation. I just think that's like a human flaw in general. It's hard for us to
live with something new.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Because it's easier to be conservative and to live with something new, and experience you have, and it's always difficult for many people to try to adapt to a new situation, because it's needed more forces, more attempts, and it's something which will make you to be stronger, smarter, and so on. And not everyone wants that.
Not everybody wants to be challenged, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Well, moving on. So, question marks, right, over here on top. So lesson three, we're going to uncover the third skill of what it means to be a critical thinker, according to Greg Shatsky. So first, you got to simplify. Second of all, you got to fight mass opinion. Mass opinion is not always correct. And you are risking being driven over, right? You are risking being attacked by the public, but I think you have to. We have to have intellectual rebels, otherwise there is no progress. So fighting mass opinion is key. Simplifying is key. Moving on to the third key critical thinking skill. So before we move on to it, though, I have story time. I want to tell you guys a story. So get yourselves comfortable, sip some tea. I'm going to talk for some time here, but shouldn't take too long. So has everyone seen this movie, first of all?
Yeah.
The name of the movie is The Shawshank Redemption. Побег из Шоушенка по-русски. Все смотрели?
Of course.
I watched it.
You've seen it? If someone hasn't seen it, let me know. I'm gonna publicly shame you for not.
Yes, force you watching it with the gun.
For not having watched it. Just kidding. But yeah, I hope everyone has seen it. It's just going to be easier to understand this story if you have seen it. But if you haven't, check it out. It's a great movie. So something that people don't know about this this movie is that, well, it was a short story by Stephen King first. It wasn't even a novel. It was a little like novella, right? It was a short story. And here's something that I want you guys to know about the short story, not the movie. In the short story, this character, played by Morgan Freeman, and by the way, his name is Red, Krasny, right? That's his name. In the short story, he is Irish. Okay? And in the movie by Frank Darabont, he is African American. So, question, why do you think that is?
I know.
Anybody besides Daniel? Maria, you have any guesses?
I have many variants, but I don't know.
Try one.
Maybe to make this conflict stronger.
Well, I mean, in terms of, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a valid answer. But what do you mean?
It depends on the station. I don't remember when it was filmed. I suppose it's pretty old one. Today it's just a trend, and everyone tries to show someone who is black, who is gay, who is a person with a kind of disability, because people throughout the world want to know that there are not only white, beautiful people in this world.
You're almost there. You're almost there. But I'm gonna keep on going with this. So in the book he's Irish, right? And this has to do with the English. Question: what has the English been doing to the Irish for quite a while in the past? 200 years ago, 150 years ago. Daniel?
Okay, they were using them as slaves, and actually they were dehumanizing them quite a lot. And they, so Ireland, despite their closeness to British Islands, was like an Africa for British. They discriminated Irish as they could and thought about them as about violent and like
yeah, they were seen as brutes, kind of.
Yeah, yes, brutes, disgusting people, without education, who doesn't deserve any mercy, and
yeah.
Also they perceive them as merciless people. So actually they were blacks of of that century.
Right. They were kind of like going through what Africans are going through in America right now, right? They were discriminated against enormously. There is this famous event called the Potato Famine, right? Which is this incredible hunger in Ireland that led to massive deaths and massive poverty, right? And just a lot of misery, which then forced the Irish to move. That's one of the events, right? But this is a major event here that forced the Irish to move to the United States, right? And we know that the Irish were not welcome in the United States, right? These were the kinds of signs that you could see in Boston in the beginning of the 20th century, the end of the 19th century. Things like "Help wanted, no Irish need apply," right? Or things like this: "No Irish, no blacks, no dogs." So we don't really think about this now, right? We don't really look at the Irish people this way today, or at least I'd like to hope so. But generally, we have solved that problem, right? And this is a monument in Boston, celebrating the Irish immigrants. This is like an Irish family, moving to Boston. So it's something that we just look at as history now, right? And this is where Stephen King comes in. Red is the name of his character, right? And it's an Irish kid in the short story. And the full name of the short story is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. I just cannot recommend this short story enough. Even especially actually, if you've seen the movie, read the short story. You guys can all handle that English. And if you want your English to improve, you got to start reading in English. And I recommend starting with this. Going to English language centers is not going to move you forward, right? You guys have hit a barrier. You guys got to start reading in English and just like living in English and just, read this. I really recommend this. I would love to discuss this with all of you. The short story is a bit different from the movie, but this is Frank Darabont. This is, the guy that came to Stephen King and said, "Mr. King, can I make a movie out of your short story?" And I'd like to promote him a little bit because I don't think he gets enough attention, and I think he should get it. He's also the director of The Green Mile. He is the creator of the TV series called The Walking Dead, like Ходячие мертвецы, that you guys have probably heard about.
Yeah.
Wonderful genius filmmaker and human being. And he is going to be the other director that I'll promote besides John Carpenter, which is the director of the movie They Live. And we've watched the scene from that movie during the first lesson. So Frank Darabont is another genius filmmaker that I think deserves a bit more attention. So The Shawshank Redemption, right? Great movie. And again, coming back to this, well, there's the answer, right? He wanted to make it a bit more relevant, right? Because people would probably not understand this discrimination as much if the guy was Irish and had red hair, right? We would probably just see him as another white guy. But I think this worked, right? I think it's a genius move. It's a genius move in terms of how we adapt literature to the screen. So that was my little story. Moving on to another key skill that you need to have. So this is what I want to uncover today. So a strategy you need to filter information or to be a critical thinker is to understand that we know very little about the mind, right? In other words, we know very little about the limits of our mind. So basically, the skill is embrace the idea that your mind is limited. Embrace this. Question, who came up with this analogy to look at the mind? To see it like an iceberg. German guy. I think so.
Germans are good at psychology. A lot of famous psychologists came from Germany.
Oh, yeah. So who created this analogy, the iceberg theory?
Maybe it means that you see only the water is over the water, and you don't see what is under the water, and you can't analyze all the situation when you don't see the whole object.
Yes, thank you, Anastasia. That's exactly what this idea is about. The idea is that you can only work with what's above water, right? With your consciousness. And we also have a subconscious, right? Like подсознание, that we know very little about. But this is an idea by Sigmund Freud, which is one of his canonical ideas that we still discuss today. And we definitely relate to the iceberg idea a lot, right? But yeah, we know very little about our mind because a lot of it is, quote unquote, underwater. And one thing that we like to do is called anchoring. So anchoring is kind of like one of the limits of our mind that we talk little about. So what do you guys think that means, just from the idea of this? That we anchor things in our mind. What do you guys think that means?
Maybe it's a scene or the world, for example, or signal or something like that, which make you to think about something using some kinds of associations.
Yeah. Any other ideas? Close. Just close, not close enough. Almost there. Daniel, do you remember this one? I think we talked about it.
Of course. This means that once you heard something, it feels like storage, or basically when you hear something once, you are protecting this theory until the end. All facts and information that are coming from other sources are supporting this theory, or if they are not supporting, you just don't believe it, basically.
Right. And this is kind of like the confirmation bias, right? The idea that you want to continue looking for support for ideas that you already have, right? It's hard for you to embrace new ideas. So if you are basically, if you are living in Boston in the beginning of the 20th century and you are an English Protestant, right? It's going to be hard for you to all of a sudden believe that Irish Catholics are people just like you. It's going to take time for you, right? Basically, like, this idea is going to be anchored, this idea that they're not humans, right? Same thing comes for scientific discoveries, right? A lot of people used to believe, and some people still believe this, that the earth is flat, right? Which sounds ridiculous now, but that was what we believed. Because look around.
Some still believe.
Because look around, it's flat. Some people still believe this, right? They are anchored to this idea, right? That the earth is still flat. There are believers of this theory still to this day, right? Which is kind of, isn't that interesting? I find that crazy. But it is what it is.
I think the craziest thing that probably you didn't notice this meme, but I think last year or 2 years ago, there was a school student who was trying to prove that actually it's flat, and who disagrees with that, he's dumb as hell. And he found supporters. This is the thing, he found supporters. And some adult people also were supporting this theory and trying to explain that there are some conspiracy behind. And actually it's flat. We are betrayed by governments, they are lying. It's flat.
It's Photoshop, bro. It's Photoshop.
Yes, it's Photoshop.
Anyways, guys, so the one thing I want you to take away from this lesson is that this is how the earth looks, okay? You've been lied to the whole time. It's not round. It's flat.
It's like pizza.
Yeah.
There are some dough in the bottom.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. So we have other ideas, right? So I'm Jewish. And not that I deal with a lot of anti-Semitism, but I'm still amazed at how quickly people started looking at Jews differently in the middle of the 20th century, right? And how quickly they were dehumanized, and how quickly a large portion of our population kind of anchored to this idea that Jews are rats, right? Maybe there are people still out there that think that way, right? So that's an example. Another example is in talking about the Russian world, right? This idea that there is such a thing as divine rule. There is this idea that, God chooses the leader of the nation and you should bow down to him and obey him, right? Divine rule. And would you guys agree that we are still anchored to this idea a little bit?
About God and king?
Yeah, the idea that that God chooses the czar, or this higher power, if you don't want to use the word God, this higher power chooses the czar or the leader of the country.
I have alternative way of thinking.
Thank God. I mean, thank the higher power that you think differently.
I'm an atheist, and that's the problem. I can't believe in that scene.
Well, would you agree that it's a thing in Russia, though? For a lot of people?
Not a lot, but some people, I think, believe in it. And
I think some people still believe in it, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, and I also think that some people in the government believe in it, because this is how they support. They believe that they are not just a bunch of random folks who were training with Putin in 90s and 80s.
They are not random. They were chosen, but not by the God, but by the particular person.
No, they were chosen by the gods. You're a liar. You're mistaken. Everything is divine. It has a purpose. You just don't know. So you should go to the church and ask, and you will get all the answers. And actually, if you go to the church,
I prefer go to Athens. I suppose there is a real God and something like that. At least it's ancient spirit, and they made a lot of great things.
But I can say that if you go to the Russian church organizes history lectures, and they will tell you that everything is determined by the God. And I think people...
Yeah, I remember these talks and rumors last year about what's better for Yekaterinburg to build one more church or to live for people one particular square and with trees.
Mm-hmm.
It's permanently... there is a kind of need to build more churches to be better.
Yes. Make Russia great again, build more churches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, agree or disagree, that's something that's rooted, I think, in the Russian psyche and the Russian mentality and the Russian language, right? This idea of divine rule. And we are anchored to this idea.
I suppose it's just easier because in this case, you shouldn't think you have already got the decision. There's a person who was already been chosen, and that's why you should listen to this person and to be good for this particular person.
Yeah. Well, this is a shot from Sergei Eisenstein's Ivan the Terrible, right? And there are rumors about Ivan the Terrible that he anchored himself to this idea, right? Which makes sense, right? That that he was chosen by God, that he has absolute divine rule, that he can do anything he wants in a way, right? But there are rumors that he repented in the end. So he did kind of de-anchor himself from this idea at the end of his life. And there are rumors that he kind of, he he lived in almost full isolation. Besides a small number of people that were loyal to him, and he was questioning this idea himself. That's the rumor. Those are the rumors about the end of his life, that he was questioning this idea. So we do change throughout our life, right? We can look at things one way and then look at things the other way, right? There is this story about Leo Tolstoy, right? That he, he had kind of like a crisis at some point in his life. And that's what Ispovедь is about, right? That he was like, who am I? Who am I? Why do I think that I'm supposed to educate all these people, right? He kind of started doubting himself. So there is a disconnection, right? We're not always kind of anchored to the same ideas throughout our whole life. But I think it's an interesting notion. I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's an interesting aspect of like the Russian mentality, divine rule, and just how deeply we are anchored to this. So dehumanization is another thing that we do, and it's connected to anchoring, but it's a little different. So this is a famous painting that I think has an incredible power. Because it addresses the notion of dehumanization. Does anybody know who painted this?
Repin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy, right? The man. I see this painting like this. Not everybody sees it this way, but this is something that is an example of dehumanization for me, right? We're not supposed to suffer with them, right? But then that's the power of Repin, right? The Repin makes you question. He makes you think critically. Well, maybe we are supposed to feel empathy. So this relates to this, right? And another notion that this relates to is something called the compassion fade. So I want to talk about this notion of the mind. So when we deal with the suffering of one person, we see it as a problem, right? But when we talk about large numbers of people, they just become statistics, right? So there is such a thing as compassion fade. Basically means that the idea basically means that if it's a large number of people suffering, we tend to disconnect from this issue, right? Because what can we do about this suffering? That's kind of how our mind works, right? I'm Russian American, and I spent time studying at an American high school, and I remember my history teacher kind of celebrating, my American history teacher, right? Kind of like celebrating the heroic deeds of the American army during World War II, which there were plenty. I am not denying those deeds, right? But, me being with a Russian background, I was like, well, maybe we should talk about how many Soviets died in this war, and maybe we should talk about how many Chinese people died in this war, right? If you look at the numbers, this is kind of ridiculous. And German people, by the way, right? That's the third largest casualty. But there is this compassion fade, right? Because of how large these numbers are. And I'm not proposing any solutions or selling anything. I just think that's something that people need to think more about, right? And especially with the events in Belarus. If one person from Belarus is having issues, we are, in my opinion, we are more likely to feel compassion than when it's like, okay, the whole country is going through issues, when and that's our mind for some reason tends to kind of like shut down at that time, and it kind of just it brushes the issue away, right? Because like, oh, it's the whole country, whatever, well, I'm gonna move on with my day. which is something that we just do as humans, and that just kind of baffles me. So key idea, the key idea is that our mind is limited, right? We anchor, we dehumanize, we have compassion fade. We have these limits of our mind that we haven't necessarily addressed completely. Are there any other limits of the mind that came to you guys as a result of this seminar? Is there anything that you can mention, perhaps from previous lessons, or maybe something came to your head from personal experiences?
Like stereotypes?
Yeah, for sure. Generalizations, stereotypes. Yeah, like labeling large groups of people and saying that they all have some sort of trait. That's something that we love to do. Absolutely.
I would like to say, but unfortunately, we are recording, and those groups are quite powerful. That's why I prefer to keep it.
You might have as well already said it, but all right.
But who, you know, until you pronounce it, you didn't say anything, basically. I didn't say anything, I just said that there are some folks and some huge groups, but who are those groups? Anyone can be in this group, and I didn't say anything in particular. Why, what I was thinking about them, I didn't mention it also.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so key idea. So let's rewind. The key idea. I'm gonna fill it in. Embrace your limits. Right? You are not perfect. In terms of how your cognition works, we are not done evolving. Hopefully we'll never stop, right? But you guys have reached the halfway point, and that's the key idea of the halfway point, is that our mind is quite limited, and we have to address this. We have to think about this. Educators have to talk about this. And that's what I'm trying to promote, and that's what I'm fighting for. The idea that intelligence is broad, right? When we call someone intelligent, we mean different things. And I just think there is no such thing as a perfect human that does, has the perfect mind, that has no limits and no biases and no limits. Yeah. So embrace your limits. Simplify, fight mass opinion, and embrace your limits. That's what we have for now. So I have a Kahoot for us. Let's play it. And that will be the end of today's seminar. So let's go. You guys will need a separate device for this. So get your smartphones out. If you are listening to this on your laptops, if you are listening to this using your phone, you will need another phone, borrow from someone, but you will need another device. So go ahead and use that other device to go to Kahoot.it, and then you have to enter the PIN for the game. Is anybody having issues connecting?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in?
I'm in.
Me too.
Me too.
All right, cool. Let's get going. We do have more people in the conference, but I think this is just going to be 4 players then. Let's go. So Machiavelli states in The Prince that it is better to be feared than loved. True or false? Nice. Lao Tzu agrees with Machiavelli and Tao Te Ching. The reason Red is African in the Shawshank Redemption, the film, is that nice. The Irish were welcomed with open arms during their massive immigration to the US.
I.
And stage is on top. All right. One of the limits of our mind is dehumanization is when last question. Compassion fade occurs when there are numerous victims instead of just a few victims. Yay. Nice. Congrats, Maria. Good for you. Legend. So, thank you guys for being here. This is lesson 3. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something new. I hope I hope you stimulated your mind, and I hope it makes you want to, go read something this seminar. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thank you guys for helping me develop this course and being a part of it. Really appreciate your time and attention. So we have 2 more lessons left. There's going to be one on Wednesday at 9 p.m. and then there's going to be one on Friday at 9 p.m. as well. So yeah, stop by. So see you guys on Wednesday, yeah, at 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, you guys have a great evening. Talk to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Great evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.